Okay, we're starting, not week 3, but module 3, because this is a compressed semester. I'm going to go back and review where we started from the beginning. It may be redundant from my last video, but I want to make sure I've covered everything, because then we're going to go over the test that's coming up. So the first thing, and I'm looking at, now you have a textbook called an OER textbook, which means we provide it. You're going to want to read that material, because some of the questions on the test are going to be from that material. And it's free, obviously. All right, so the first thing I'm looking at here, we've been through this before. The key to logistics is, this is about global trade. Not domestic trade, but global trade. And the function of marketing. Marketing is the overriding organizational function, and underneath that is supply chain, which deals with the order processing, the ordering of goods, and then the supplying of goods. Logistics is the physical movement of the product. Okay, look at that, I wrote that down. Now there's a video in here on Ken Robinson on education creativity. There's one on communication collaboration. There's our logistics certificate, which we encourage you to do, because you can take 5 courses and get 2 certificates, one in international business and one in logistics. And those certificates are of value to you. There's a list of our laws. I think there's 8 or 9 of them. I lost count. Right? Patrick's Law all the way to Eddie's Law. There's the Carl Sagan video, the pale blue dot, which is like really, really important for all the classes to watch. There's a video on logistics. We covered that. Logistics 101. There's a link in here on Module 1 to logistics terms. Several years ago, one of the things a student asked me for was, like, could I give them a list of terminology, which is kind of helpful, which we did. So it's there for you to review. Okay, Module 2 is global trade. West Coast logistics. The bottom line is that I know I covered this in a previous video. The big dance is LA Long Beach. 40% of all cargo comes through LA Long Beach. No other port is the same. Savannah's not the same. Charleston's not the same. Houston's not the same. New York's not the same. The #1 place is LA Long Beach. We got videos on supply chain, video on ocean transportation, maritime. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but we just had our 50th reunion for the United States Merchant Marine Academy, class of '68, which was one of the 2 most significant classes from the United States Merchant Marine Academy. 1946, which was the beginning of the end of the Second World War, 44, 45, 46, and of course 1968, 67, 68, 69, the Vietnam conflict. Now let me make this point to you. When we got out of school, there was great demand for us to drive ships with U.S. flags. The minute that conflict was over, no more demand. So very few of us who started out driving ships were driving them 50 years later. Okay, let's see. There's a video on air transportation, rail transportation, Module 3. Module 3 is about physical movement. Ocean transportation, which is 95% of all cargo internationally. 96 is a big number. Air transportation, which is a smaller part of it, it's a lot more expensive, it's faster, but it can handle very much volume. And rail transportation is the most cost-effective way of moving cargo domestically. If you get outside of 250 miles of a major rail ramp, then truck becomes competitive with it. Okay, oh, there's Module 3. Yeah, I'm done. Carrier oblique maritime policy. We don't have one in this country. That's a problem. Every other developed country does. The other issue is carrier alliances. Because of consolidation, you've got 3 or 4 major alliances of ocean carriers. And they impact, they share space on their ships, they share terminals, makes the terminal and recovery a little bit more complicated, but it lowers the overall cost of ocean transportation. Okay, now let me go through the test for you. Okay. I'm going to just give you the answer to this one, right? So, in our face-to-face class, we cover this stuff, but I have a little chart, 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, if you're going to start a business, you want to be in the business, you want to be in a good market. It's better to be in a good market than it is to be a good operator. The best thing is to be in a good market and be a good operator. But if you have to choose one of the two, it's better to be in a good market, because you can fix being a poor operator. You can't fix a declining market. Case in point, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Steel mills went away. I go to Kings Point, big ships. I get all these jobs. All of a sudden, that goes away, right? Didn't matter how good I was. There aren't enough gigs for it, right? So you need to be in a growing market. Okay, ocean transport. I covered that. The Panama Canal. You may have heard of this. Panama decided to expand the width of the canal so that they could handle what were called post-Panamax ships. Post-Panamax meant ships that could no longer, container ships that couldn't make it through the Panama Canal from west to east or east to west. And so those ships were roughly 12,000 TEUs, a TEU being a 20-foot equivalent. So they spent a couple trillion dollars, whatever, a lot of money expanding the canal over the last 10 years, right? They get all done with that, and all of a sudden the ocean carriers now are putting out 18,000 TEU ships that can't go through the canal. So the 12,000 TEU ships can go through, but most of the big ships now are bigger than that. Logistics part of marketing, we covered that. Okay. The categories that belong in international logistics are transportation issues: air, ocean, truck, railroad, rail, right? Warehousing, which is where you store stuff, and a term we call drayage, which is basically trucking between two terminals. So an ocean terminal to a warehouse or a rail terminal, that short drayage, where you're pulling a container, that's called drayage. Those are the categories that are part of logistics. Why is LA Long Beach an attractive port? Well, one of the reasons is geography. It's close to where most of the manufacturing's done. The second thing is it has deep water. The third thing is that it has a major metropolitan area around it, which consumes a lot of the products that are coming in. And the fourth thing is we have a great domestic east-west transportation network with both highways and rail. One of the, I think on the thing I have my 10 or 9 laws, right? Number 1 law, Patrick's Law, revenue certainty. Because if you don't have revenue, you don't have physical product moving, which means you don't need logistics. This is a good one. The question becomes, in a classroom setting, in a college classroom setting, who's most responsible for getting a quality education? It's a question you need to ponder. I'm now going to give you a statement. It's not a question. In my view, there's no excuse for not getting a world-class education in the state of California, period. Because of the K through 12 system, the community college systems, the Cal State system, the UC system. It's the best education system in the world. Take advantage of it. One of the interesting things about logistics is you're dealing with things coming from different places. It's usually long distances. So if you have something coming from Vietnam going to Memphis, it's kind of important that you understand that those are different cultures. Memphis is different than Southern California. Vietnam is different than Korea. You need to be sensitive to these different cultures. One of the benefits of logistics, it's hard to outsource their jobs, right? I mean, you can eliminate their jobs through technology like truck drivers, warehouse workers. However, hard to outsource them because you have to have the product where the consumer is. There's a couple questions here that probably be to your best interest to read my CV. Okay, the last question is, okay, let's get back to the cultural issue. So I'll give you a great example. In Asia, the social standards are different between Korea, between China, between Okinawa, between Hong Kong, between Japan. Okay, they're different. One of the unique things about Japan is you don't tip people. It's all part of the service charge. If you try to tip them, they get insulted. Now, that's not the case in other places. And number 19, which is probably the most important question of this particular test. I'm going to give you the answer. Italians make the best shoes. That is true. Okay, we'll see you next week.